What's going on, everyone? Darkside Phil here, and welcome to another edition of the Hateful Truth video game review series. And today we'll be talking about a game that undoubtedly was one of the most anticipated games of 2011. And you know, that could be a double-edged sword, because when you have a game where it has such a high expectation for greatness, sometimes it can be hard to live up to that expectation, especially when a lot of the times with the media hype and the big push and everything and the fanboys that come out and say, oh, this is going to be Game of the Year. You're like, the game's not out yet. How could you even know if it's going to be Game of the Year? A lot of pressure on this game developer. And so did they deliver? And that's what we're going to talk about today when we talk about Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception. Now, I got the collector's edition, so this is actually the steel box case that comes with the collector's edition of Uncharted 3. And so I'll be holding this up when I'm talking about the game, obviously. But, so, right out of the box, Uncharted 3 by Naughty Dog follows suit with the previous iterations of the series. And I do have to say that when you play an Uncharted game at this point, they've got 3 solid entries to their franchise. You know what to expect, and you also know that you're buying a quality game. You know that when you invest your $60 to play Uncharted 3, then not only are you going to get a great experience out of the campaign, but you're also going to now have a cool replayability multiplayer experience as well. So when I got this game, I had no problems whatsoever spending the money to get the collector's edition, because I knew I was going to get my time out of the game, okay? So the campaign, we'll start with the campaign. By the way, this is really a spoiler-free review, so don't worry if you haven't played the campaign yet. You don't want to be spoiled. I will not spoil. I'm just going to give generalizations about what happens in the campaign and some things I like about it, some things I think, unfortunately, at this time are getting a little bit stale, okay? So let's talk. First of all, the campaign is pretty typical of any Uncharted game. There's going to be some treasure hunting involved. And there's going to be, you know, a new villain, some plot twists and things thrown in there. Obviously, yes, you know that you're going to be searching for a treasure. So, just as a very small plot summarization, okay, the main goal of this game is finding out what happened to Sir Francis Drake during a 6-month period when supposedly he was supposed to be sailing from point A to point B, but it was discovered that he was way too good of a sailor to take 6 months to get from there to somewhere, to point A to point B. He must have been doing something else. And so this is basically the quest to find out what he discovered during that 6-month period, okay? And I do like how now it's the third part of a series, and a lot of the times when you get to a third part of a trilogy, like a game or a movie trilogy, or even books, they start to do some things that are a little bit cliche. So, for example, you get a little bit of a prequel kind of backstory about Nathan Drake as a younger person, and Sully as a younger person. That is in the game. You know, you're going to have your typical things that kind of happen in a third installment kind of happen in this game. A little bit more character development on a lot of your favorite characters. Getting to see some of the characters who were side characters in the previous games, they come back as side characters in this game, just to have kind of like their cameo for a mission or two. They're not necessarily integral to the plot, but they're there to serve their purpose. The graphics are on par with Uncharted 2, absolutely. And some people might say, oh, well, Uncharted's a series always known for groundbreaking graphics. Didn't they blow you away this time? Well, I'm going to be honest, after Uncharted 2, I don't know what else they could possibly do, because the graphics were so good in Uncharted 2. So, you know, lush, realistic environments, you know, extremely detailed character models. It looked like you were watching a Hollywood movie when you played Uncharted 2. And Uncharted 3 is exactly the same, okay? Some cool things they do with the graphics. At one point there's a building that literally burns down while you're inside of it, and you have to escape, and just the graphical effects of the flames eating up this building, the embers and everything, pretty cool. And then there's also a portion where you're in the desert, and seeing the detail. Well, I actually made the comment when I was playing, you're riding a horse in the desert, and I said, gee, imagine if this level of detail of graphics were in Red Dead Redemption when we were riding a horse around in that game. That game would have been fucking amazing. You know, like oh my god, that's really fucking blowing my mind with the level of detail. In this game, it has that much. The horse looks real. It looks like if you slap the horse's ass, it's gonna kick you in the face, okay? You can see fur on the animal. You can see everything is so detailed. The sand, when you're walking through the desert and you're seeing mirages, or you're seeing a sandstorm, or you're seeing the detail on the dunes, really amazing. And they've pretty much perfected their graphics engine at this point. Really good what they do with the graphics in these games, okay? The gameplay. The gameplay is exactly what you would expect it to be. All your favorite stuff from Uncharted 1 and 2 is here. Your cover system, your third person blind fire, peeking out of cover shooting, tossing grenades, killing a bunch of generic enemies. Let's face it, in all these games, all the enemies are pretty generic, and yeah, it is exactly what you would expect. I don't even think, really comparing it to the other games, I'm not really even positive that there were any new weapons in this game compared to the other Uncharted games. Not that it needed them. I mean, Uncharted already has a wide variety of weapons and things to do in the game. Why do you need more weapons? You know what I mean? The one thing they did dramatically improve, and I think this is probably the one improvement everyone's going to talk about in their reviews of Uncharted 3, the melee combat is drastically improved. And the first comment I made when I started to play the game was, gee, I'm doing the melee combat, this kind of feels like Arkham City. And it is. It's similar to that Batman Arkham Asylum / Arkham City combat, where you get one button to do all your melee attacks, another button to do timed counter attacks, and then another button that'll like do a grapple attack or a throw. So unlike the previous Uncharted games where it was kind of clunky when you wanted to do melee, in this game it's really done a lot better, and actually leads to some really cool interactions in the game where instead of just running and gunning, you're now surrounded by a bunch of dudes and you have to take them out from melee combat. Again, similar to like Batman and Batman Arkham City, but I think it's a good thing. When you have a game that's all just shooting and no melee combat, you can get bored and repetitive. In this game, you can actually mix it up and have some variety, and I like that. I really like the improvement of those controls, okay? And the length of the campaign, a little bit shorter than Uncharted 2 from everything I could tell, at least comparing my playthrough of Uncharted 2 to my playthrough of Uncharted 3. Uncharted 2 was about 60-something parts, and this playthrough was only about 40-something parts. Now, does that mean maybe I got better as a gamer? That's very possible. If you remember in Uncharted 2, I was dying non-stop. In this game, I died some, but I wasn't like really getting demolished like I was a lot of the time in Uncharted 2. And I've been playing games hardcore now for about 2 years, so it's only natural that I would have gotten better at these games. But at the same time, just content-wise, Uncharted 2 did have 26 chapters, while Uncharted 3 comes in at clocking in at only 22 chapters. So it is a little bit shorter than Uncharted 2, which could be a little bit of a letdown for a lot of people if you're having a lot of fun with this game and you're like, man, it's over already. It's roughly 7 hours of gameplay on the normal difficulty. Keep in mind, I'm sure if you put it on hard or crushing, it's going to take you longer. But 7 hours, a pretty standard length for a campaign these days. I believe it's just under, I think it was 8 or 9 hours for Uncharted 2, okay? Now, some things that I would like to talk about the campaign that I think, unfortunately, either there's some things they just haven't fixed or improved over the years, and there's some things that are getting a little stale. So, for example, just like in Uncharted 1 and Uncharted 2, there were definitely parts in those games where you would walk into a room and you'd have to kill several waves of enemies in order for a door to open or to do whatever to progress to the next part of the game, and these enemies would literally spawn next to you and fuck you up. It still happens in Uncharted 3. There will be times when you will clear a room of enemies, take one step through a doorway, and an enemy has spawned to your right off camera so you can't see him. He has a grenade launcher, he shoots it straight at you, instant death. And you can't avoid it, and there's nothing you can do about it until you know that he's going to be there the next time around, so you can either walk around a different way or be careful so that you don't get hit by the grenade. So the game still has that unforgiving mechanic to it where you're going to die in certain portions, probably repeatedly, until after through the process of trial and error, you figure out where the enemies are going to spawn. And it could be frustrating for beginners. For people who didn't play Uncharted 1 and Uncharted 2, it might be a little frustrating for you, especially when you're in a room with 4 snipers, all with their fucking lasers doing this like a disco, and there's also people on the ground coming up with shotguns trying to shoot you, dudes with body armor walking up, and then all of a sudden, 3 guys perfectly throw grenades that all land directly in front of you at the same time, and you're like, I can't get out of cover, I can't stay in cover, I can't go left, I can't go right, I'm fucked, you're dead, okay? It's gonna happen. It's happened since Uncharted 1. It's just a game mechanic that they've put into the game. And until, through the process of trial and error, and sometimes just dumb luck, through the AI maybe not going the way that it went the last time, so you have an opportunity to take cover over in a certain area, you are going to die some cheap deaths in this game, and it might be a little on the frustrating side. For me, it wasn't that big of a deal. I did even comment in my playthrough about it, saying, man, I wish they would improve this, but you know what? The game's still damn good, even with those challenging parts. And to be honest, if they didn't have those really grueling, challenging parts, maybe the game would have been even shorter, and in which case, you probably would have said, this game was way too short. So I can understand maybe why they have those in there. But at this point, you're at the third entry into a series, a franchise, if you will, and some things, unfortunately for me, and my personal taste, are getting stale about Uncharted, okay? Number one, just some of the characters, like, yes, everyone loves Nathan Drake, everyone loves Sully or whatever, but once you get to the third installment of a series, you probably want to start introducing maybe some newer characters who are going to be part of the plot and take over, and they really didn't do that in this game. It was more like stick to the core people, except for, of course, for the new villain. They always have a new villain in every one of these, but stick to the core cast, develop the core cast, and that was it. It really stayed focused on the core cast. For me, I'd like to see maybe some new characters get involved and branch out a little bit more. I would have liked to see that. Some other things, and this is typical of pretty much any action-adventure game, action-adventure movie, but it kind of follows the same formula. At the beginning of the game, there's a little bit of a mystery you need to solve. Over the course of the game, some things are developed. At the end of the game, you find some crazy thing, whether it's a hidden city, whether it's a temple, whether it's a treasure, and then all of a sudden, everything blows the fuck up, and you have to escape, and then the game ends. And following suit with the other Uncharteds, this game does exactly the same thing. I'm not going to spoil it for you and tell you where you are or what you're doing or what about that, but it's the same damn ending, in my opinion, as the other Uncharteds. And once you play 3 of these games, you kind of know. As soon as I got to that final chapter or 2, I knew exactly what was going to happen. We're going to go in here, we're going to fight some guys, something's going to happen, the whole fucking place is going to blow up, we're going to have to get the fuck out, and it's going to end. And it's, it's kind of disappointing when you can tell, you can already predict what exactly is going to happen before it's happened. And with Uncharted 1 and 2, okay, Uncharted 1 you really didn't know what the hell was going to happen, and it actually did kind of have a surprise ending. If you haven't played that game, it really does take you aback what happens near the end of that game. Uncharted 2, okay, now you're kind of, you know what formula is going to happen, but at least they give you a pretty interesting boss fight at the end and a whole unique enemy set that you hadn't seen anywhere else in the game that really is kind of cool. And I joked and said they look like World of Warcraft orcs or maybe characters from Avatar, but that was pretty neat. In this game, it's kind of like, okay, I know exactly what's going to happen, and I wish that they would kind of maybe throw a monkey wrench in there and maybe have some added things at the end of the game that'll make it a little bit different. So honestly, even though there is a heavy climax at the end of the campaign, it's still kind of anticlimactic for anyone who played Uncharted 1 and Uncharted 2 because you kind of knew what was coming. So for me, personally, in my opinion, they did improve some stuff, especially with the melee combat, well improved, needed that, and it really does give some variety to the game. I like that. But at the same time, being a little bit shorter than the last game, kind of giving into a lot of these action movie cliches at this point, and you already kind of know what's going to happen in the game. I honestly can tell you, even though Uncharted 3, I like it a lot, don't get me wrong, I like the campaign of Uncharted 3 an awful lot, I think the campaign of Uncharted 2 was actually a little bit better. And I think that Naughty Dog kind of struggled because they knew they had such a gem with Uncharted 2 that it was going to be hard to try to live up to those expectations with Uncharted 3. And they didn't do a bad job at all. They did a great job, but I still personally think that Uncharted 2's campaign was slightly better. But now that we've talked about the campaign, we have to realize that unlike Uncharted 1, this game has multiplayer, just like Uncharted 2 did, and we have to talk a little bit about that and say, does it add enough to the game to significantly impact a review score? How is the multiplayer? Well, Naughty Dog, I think they knew exactly what they were doing when they came out with these multiple waves of multiplayer betas for this game. There was one a couple months ago that everyone could go to who was a PlayStation Plus member, and then after that they had one that was a Subway sandwich promotion. Subway restaurants had a promotion where if you bought like a soda, you get a code and then you could play almost the full beta. It was like every game mode was unlocked except for the co-op ones, but it was only limited maps, but you could play every game mode of the beta. So you really got a flavor for what this multiplayer was going to be like. And there's several multiplayer modes, okay? First of all, there's a lot of competitive modes. You've got free-for-all, you've got team deathmatch, you've got plunder, which is a unique mode where you have to capture an artifact and collect it and bring it to your base, which is kind of like capture the flag when you really think about it. There's team objective, which in my opinion is bar none the best mode in the game, where it varies between different goals. Whether you're trying to capture a treasure, it's team deathmatch, or maybe it's capture territories and hold them, like King of the Hill style. All those things are added in there and rotated around in this randomly in this game mode, and I think that's really where the multiplayer shines. In addition to all that, you've got cooperative modes, and these modes were not in Uncharted 2. So you've got cooperative survival mode, which is kind of like a horde mode from Gears of War. You know what I mean? Everyone kind of expects that was going to be in it. But then you've got actually a co-op adventure mode, which is a series of 5 missions, which roughly run 20 to 30 minutes each. And what you'd have to do is, it's basically like a mini campaign with co-op with 2 of your friends. It's 3-player co-op online, or split-screen co-op 2 players locally. And you have to go and find an artifact and kill certain enemies. And it's similar to like playing the campaign of the game with a couple friends. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely not the campaign of the game. Like I said, it's only 5 stages. They only last about 20 to 30 minutes each, so it'll add a couple hours of gameplay on to your game overall. And what I do want to say is they definitely focused on multiplayer as a major focus of Uncharted 3. You can tell. Everything, when you play the game, you can tell. It's a lot more polished than Uncharted 2's multiplayer was. The maps are drastically better than the Uncharted 2 maps. The Uncharted 2 maps, honestly, were kind of amateurish a lot of the time. You were like, man, why is this such a weird enclosed area? Here, this is an obvious choke point. This is an obvious place where you can hide with this artifact or whatever, you know what I mean, for those things where you have to capture the idol. And it was a little annoying that I think they really said, we need to put time in the multiplayer, because once everyone beats the campaign once or twice, we want them to have a reason to still have our game. And it is to be said that they will be releasing several DLCs coming up that are going to be map packs and also skin packs for your characters. But not that that's any big deal. But they are putting a lot of time into the multiplayer of the game, and it is fun. I said this about Uncharted 2, and I'm going to not say it. I'm going to take it back about Uncharted 3. In Uncharted 2, I said, the multiplayer is nice. It's a nice feature to have. They wanted to give you more bang for your buck, but it really wasn't needed. The campaign of Uncharted 2 was enough to sell the game, and it really didn't add that much to the quality of the game because it had that multiplayer in it. I completely disagree about Uncharted 3. I think the multiplayer is a massive asset because it's fun as hell. It's interesting. Is it expert level, tournament level gameplay that you're going to go and enter some worldwide tournament in it? Probably not. But you're going to get several hours of fun online play out of this game, which is awesome because when you spend your $60 on Uncharted 3, you're going to get an awesome campaign, you're going to get fun online play, and you're going to get your $60 worth out of this game. This is one of those must-buy titles if you own a PlayStation 3, okay? So overall, what do I think of Uncharted 3? I think Uncharted 3, first of all, if you haven't played the first 2 Uncharteds and you have a PlayStation 3, don't be stupid, get the game, okay? The game is outstanding. The campaign is fun as hell, some of the best graphics, the best voice acting, an amazing plot, an interesting cast of characters, online play with replayability that's worth it, co-op play, if you have other friends who have PlayStation 3 and have bought this game, you're going to get to play with them for a couple hours online in co-op. It's worth it, okay? It's a must-buy if you're a PlayStation 3 owner, okay? That being said, I still stick by my statement that I think that Uncharted 2 was actually slightly better than Uncharted 3. I think at this point, when you've had a 3rd game in a series, things start to run stale, and it's not necessarily Naughty Dog's fault. They have this saying: if it ain't fixed, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the formula definitely works. The game is one of the best of the year. Definitely a $60 value, and it's a must-buy. So obviously Naughty Dog is doing something right. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't get enough innovation in here, and the campaign didn't feel as epic as the campaign of Uncharted 2. I think with Uncharted 2, they raised the bar. It was extremely high, and they fell just slightly short of that bar this time around. But again, I'm not talking shit about the game. I love the game. I'm glad I bought it. I'm glad I experienced it. This is another one of those games where once you start playing the campaign, you will not want to stop. You will want to sit there and just experience the whole thing from start to finish. And I did the same thing with Batman Arkham City. I did the same thing with Uncharted. I sat there and I played it from start to finish. I couldn't stop. I was riveted. I wanted to get through it and see what was going to happen. So, a great game, okay? How do I score it? Well, I'll be honest with you. I will be honest with you. I think it's one of the best games of the year, but I think there were a couple games that actually did things a little bit better this year. So I actually am going to score Uncharted 3 a 9. A 9 out of 10. And that's an extremely high score for me. Very few games ever have I scored that got higher than a 9. In fact, Uncharted 2 was one of the few of them. Uncharted 2, I actually scored a 9.5. Now, I didn't do a Hateful Truth review for it, but in my top 10 games of the year, best games of 2009, Uncharted 2 got number 2, and I gave it a 9.5. So, for this game to get a 9, and being that it's a third version, a third iteration of the series, it's amazing. It's outstanding that they're still, maintaining that level of quality, that level of entertainment. And I can't wait for Uncharted 4. I hope in Uncharted 4, maybe we'll actually finally get some newer characters, we'll get some more twists and things, and it won't be exactly the same cliche formula. Maybe they'll mix it up a little bit. But for what it is, it's still an amazing game. It's a must-buy for PlayStation 3 owners. I give it a 9 out of 10. Okay? Alright, so that's it for the Hateful Truth game review of Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope this helps you make your decision whether or not you're going to get it. Fucking get it if you have a piece of PlayStation 3. Don't be stupid. And yeah, that's it. And I will see you guys next time for the Hateful Truth game review series. Thanks.